Are you ready to be quiet now?
Yeah.
All right. Hey guys, today we're going to work on side figures. If you follow me on Instagram, you may or may not have picked up on this, but when I am just doodling for funsies, not client project, not something where I have to like stick to a particular pose, I like drawing side figures. I don't know why, I just like it. Whatever, they're fun. And today we're going to go over female side view figures, and then in a couple of days I'm going to upload the male side view figures video. If you are familiar with my croquis building methods, then you know that I have a 4-step croquis building process that I apply to all figures: adults, children, male, female, front, back, side view. Okay, so I'm going to be going over those 4 steps for side view figures in this video. Therefore, I'm going to be moving a little bit quickly. If at any point you get confused or lost, go check out the more in-depth version of the step. You know, if you get lost at step 2, go watch the video devoted to step 2. It is for front view figures, but, you know, the general rules still apply. Okay? And go watch the more detailed videos if you have questions. And then if you still have questions, come back and ask them. To review, the 4 steps are tracing the gesture, building the body, adding anatomy, and photoshopping with pencil. Okay? In here, we capture the pose, capture the proportions. Here, we flesh things out so that we're getting an idea as to how big the body is going to look. And then we add our bone points and our muscle shapes. And then the last step is fixing any mistakes and finessing the figure for it to suit our ideal muse and customer. Supplies we're going to need today. Number 1, we're going to need visual references. Okay. As usual, find visual references that print large and clean and not pixelated. Find photographs that are lit really bright and clean so that you can see everything. Find figures in wearing not much so that you can really see what the body is doing. I got these swipe from 80spurple.com and asos.com. Tracing paper from, on a roll, in a sheet, whatever. Some kind of not very sticky tape. Artist tape is a little bit too sticky, but those of you who have watched my croquis building videos before know that I will just put lint on it to make it less sticky. I always develop croquis using mechanical pencils so that I can keep a nice fine line. Also because I'm lazy. You guys know this. You guys know how incredibly lazy I am. Now, usually when I am making croquis on my own, I will start off with a 0.3 HB super skinny fine pencil. For my demos, for the camera to pick up the drawing, I just draw with a darker pencil. This is a 0.5B, but just keep in mind that I'm just using this pencil so that you guys can see my drawing, not that I would start off this dark. And then, of course, skinny erasers. And then I always have a couple of color pencils. These are color mechanical pencils. These are seriously some of my favorite things in my entire studio. They are Pilot Color Eno 0.7, and I love these for grading, for corrections, for croquis building. Oh, and I forgot 2 of the most important things. Okay, you're gonna need a clear graph ruler. If you're going to stick to shorter figures, 12 inches fine, but if you're gonna elongate to a 10 head like we're gonna do today, I recommend an 18-inch. And of course, my figure drawing reference book of choice, The Human Figure Anatomy for Artists by David K. Rubins. And I may have mentioned this before, but I really like this one because it's simple. Okay, there are a lot of anatomy books out there where they're either just a little bit too detailed, and so you have this massive book where you only need about 20% of the pages. You know, usually they're geared towards, you know, anatomy classes, some sort of medical profession, majors of study, something like that. But we don't need to learn the shape of every tendon because we don't really draw those. Okay, and this is just really like large muscle and bone groups for us to draw. So I really like this one. All right, the first thing you need to do is to find the plumb line. When we do frontal figures, we start at the base of the throat, which is your suprasternal notch, and then we draw a line from that to the weight distribution in the feet. The side view is not any different, but here is the angle of the neck. We're not going to start in the front because that's not the base of the neck in a side view. It's the center, right? Ankles are pretty close together. So there's her plumb line. The reason I like this swipe is you can see the side seam here, and so it's really easy to draw the side there. And then on this one, you really can't see any center front at all. We're going to start by tracing the gesture. You're going to trace the whole head, not just the face, angle of the neck, the elbow is back here. Honestly, I would leave this alone and then add it at the very end, and I'll show you that. She's quite flat-chested, but you know that her breast is here, and there's the trunk of her upper body. Good news, you guys. I know so many of you hate pelvic boxes. So lucky for you, with side view figures, typically I don't do a pelvic box. Something like this, I definitely don't do a pelvic box, but I will try to find the crotch by, you know, wrapping from the front to the back. You know, that's the base of her crotch there, and that's the girth of my hips. And then we have our side seam here. Sometimes when I have a side view where she's a little bit more 3/4, I will do a pelvic box. To review, we need our center front. There's her belly button. And that's the back of her butt. This line perpendicular to center front. And then again, down here, that is the far edge of her hip. This distance needs to be the same as this distance. So that's the front plane of the pelvic box. That is the front of her hips. All of this is side. It's at an angle where this sticks out the most is kind of where her butt sticks out the most. And the center of the side is where your side seam would sit. Back to this figure. And then we mark her knees, the complete width of her knees. The knees will get wider as they bend because of the tendons and the cartilage and the ligaments compressing and widening. And so if this is wider than this one, because this one is straight and this one is bent, that's fine. There's the center of this femur. There's the center of that. And then her ankle is here. Other ankle is here. There is the gesture for this figure. And then at this point, you would complete the figure, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? Now, I'm going to move on to elongation. I'm going to do all 4 steps with an elongated figure because it's the more difficult out of the two. When you are doing an elongated figure, what you need to do is measure the head. It's a 10 head figure and you need to know how big a head is, right? And if you can't figure out where the top of her head is, mark where her eyes are, because eyes are going to be the center of the head. Not the center of the face, but the center of the head, and then times 2, right? So this is a 1 1/8 head. Mark off your heads. And you know, I always put this in the back so that whatever erasing I do here, I always keep my number line. Now, remember, as you work, you always want to keep your plumb lines matched up perfectly so that you're not distorting the figure, but just elongating everything. When you have a head like this, where it's very bent over, okay, you need to adjust the placement of the bottom of the head for your proportions, okay? Because if she would be normally here and your proportions start like this, if she's bent like this, then marking this the bottom of, you know, and then starting your proportions from there will really throw you off. Trace her head. And then I want you to pick her head up. Do you see this joint here? That's where I'm rotating. That's the point in which I'm rotating her head back. Necks naturally point forward. If you watched my video on wraparounds, we went over how necks naturally curve forward, but so they won't go straight up and down like this, but it'll be a lot more straight up and down than her head. So I'm going to match up the plumb line, and the 1 mark is going to be at the bottom of the chin where it should be if she was standing straight up and down. Like that. See how this chin is marked at the 1? I'm going to mark her head here. Her original head position. The 2 mark is going to be the top of the breast, not above the breast, but kind of a little bit below the top of the breast, like where a strapless dress would sit. So again, match up those plumb lines. That's where her breast is. That's where her shoulder is. And that's waist is at 3. And so the trunk of her body is here. And you're like, Zoe, her neck is like floating and disjointed over here. It's fine. We're going to address that in a second. Okay? So there's the trunk of her body. There's her rib cage. That's the beginning of her side seam. There's her elbow. We're going to do this elbow later. Her wrist is at her waist, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. You know, normally I would do it at crotch level. And then we have her crotch. We're bringing this in. We're bringing this in so that we can measure where her crotch is. On women, crotches are at 4 1/4, not a 1/4 inch, but 25% of the space. We're going to mark her hips like so. We're going to continue our side seam here. Knees are at 6. Always mark the weight leg at 6, and then after you do that, you can just mark the other knee wherever it lands in proportion, in relation, I mean. There's the angle of this leg. There's the angle of this leg. And then again, this is where you manipulate the proportions to suit your end needs. So if I want an only a little bit elongated figure for, say, costume design, because actors tend to be shorter than models on average, I would mark my ankles at 8 1/2. So I've only elongated her about half a head. I could do, you know, ankles at like 8 3/4 or, you know, somewhere around there. And that's nice for junior looks, swimwear where you want more of the body to be torso. And then classic 10 head ankles are at 9, which is what I'm going to show you today. So there's my ankle here, and connect those. There's my other ankle there, and connect those, and then draw your feet. And you know, you just grew her by a head. Let's make her feet a little bit bigger than they are in the picture, right? You're going to take the traced head again, and you're going to move it. Okay. You're going to move it so that you're keeping the angle of the neck, but you're making it longer. And so when you have the same angle of the neck, but longer, your head is going to be a little bit forward. Okay, that's just basic math, right? So keep this level, keep these lines parallel, and then tape it down. Otherwise, if you keep the head position the same, you're going to, and you try to join it up with the shoulder, you're going to make the neck really straight up and down and super stiff looking. You want to keep the angle of the neck. Okay, and so there is your step 1 with the side figure. You don't have to do this with every neck. You just have to do it with the necks where you're elongating at an angle. I'm going to take one of my colored mechanical pencils to do step 2. We're fleshing her out so that we can get an idea as to her proportions. Now this is the center, so this should be the same size as this. So that's the center. Notice that you see a little bit of your leg here, and it intersects below her butt like that. Okay, so you want this happening, and you want this happening. And again, this should be the same size as this. And then you should have a bit of negative space in here. I like doing this step in color pencil so that when I fold it over and I do her anatomy, like I'm separating the lines with the different colors. There's her sternocleidomastoid, aka Roger. There's our clavicle, and it ends right over the top of the deltoid. Get a little bit of a tricep action. Elbows get pointy when they bend. And then a soft curve for her bicep. And then a curve for her brachioradialis. Back here would be her shoulder blade, and then coming in at the rib cage. I'm gonna drop her breast just a tiny bit. And then there's her side seam. Gluteus maximus, dip, and then the curve out for your hamstring. So gluteus maximus, dip in, curve out for the hamstring. You see how the front of the quad also curves out? So we're going to give it a little bit of that curve too. You're going to see the bony points of the knee. Do you see, standing straight up and down, how the calf is kind of like back? Notice about a third of the way down, it comes out and then it starts coming back. So there's the third. We're gonna flare out and then it's going to come back in. We're going to dip across this blue line and then flare back out. We do have a slight shin curve. It's going to be away from the front. Remember, we're adding here and taking away here. We're pushing the whole calf back. And then again, our gastrocnemius comes out, comes back in, tapers, ankle, there's her kneecap, and then her shin is in there. And you see how we have this negative space and this negative space. Similar, right? Not exactly the same, but similar. And then step 4 is where we flip her over to look at corrections. Once you flip the figure over, it's almost like looking at a fresh figure. So it's like when you and your friends swap essays to edit because you've been staring at your own words for so long that you are able to skip mistakes.
It's actually interesting how the brain works in that the brain actively tries to understand what's going on and will gloss over errors that it's seen before so that everything around it makes sense.
The neck is a little long. I'm going to bring this arm up. I'm going to bring the clavicle angle here. I'm going to drop the breast another hair. Perky breasts are nice, but when they're too high, it just doesn't look right. I'm going to slim down the arm a little bit, just a little bit. And then remember, we got to add this one. I think that her calves could be a little bit slimmer, just a little bit, not too much. I think I want to make her a little bit curvier, so I'm going to give her some more breasts. Okay, this is the part where you think about who your customer is, who your muse is, who your, what your fit model needs to look like. All right, I'm going to give her a little bit more butt, a little bit more breast. I'm going to give her a bit more thigh. Just a little bit. Okay. Make sure you always have your plumb line. And there you go. Your 4 steps to an elongated side view figure. Here's another slightly different side view pose for you guys to see how it's done real quick. So I'm just going to trace some of this stuff out because it's kind of hard to see. And here's me just freehanding a side view for funsies because I felt like it. So that was side view figures. I hope you learned something from that and enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed drawing them. I love drawing side view figures. And you guys know the drill. If you have any questions, check the info box. Maybe scroll through the comments and see if I've already answered your question. That would really help me a lot. It would probably also help you a lot because I really only answer comments once a day or two, right? And you might get your answer faster. And, you know, share, subscribe, like, thank you, all those good things. And subscriber requests are always welcome. Leave me a comment below. But as of this taping, the queue is a year long. So keep that in mind when you make your requests. All right? And I will see you next time.